like we were 2 inches away from the world going in a totally different direction. It might be the most important 2 inches in the history of humanity when you think of the consequences. Not might be. It is definitely the most important 2 inches in the history of mankind. I don't know about you, but the thing that I value more than anything else in this world is freedom. And I think some of us, we say that, and then we get pretty hypocritical about freedom, right? Like we want our freedom. We don't necessarily want everybody else to have their freedom because we don't agree with their views or their this or their that. In light of the Donald Trump assassination attempt last week, I'd like to talk about freedom today. And this will almost certainly be the most controversial episode I've done. I'm going to say some things today that if you just listen to a clip and take it out of context, it will probably make me look really bad, pretty shitty. But I really hope that you listen to the whole message because I think what I'm talking about today is really important and hope it resonates. So taking a bit of a risk today. Army of Great Men. Let's go. Before we get started today, you see I'm wearing a Detroit Tigers hat, and I wear this hat a lot. People ask me all the time, this has nothing to do with the show, by the way, but I just need to clarify. So people ask me all the time, are you a Detroit Tigers fan? You know, because you wear a hat and you don't see a lot of Detroit Tigers hats out there. Just to be clear, I'm not a Detroit Tigers fan. I'm a Magnum PI fan, and not this new, like, crappy version. I mean, like the OG Tom Selleck, short shorts, big mustache, Magnum PI. That's my Magnum. That's why I wear this hat. So when we were in Hawaii in February, I was wearing this hat because when you go to Hawaii, you gotta look like Magnum, duh. And every once in a while, I'd see somebody, they'd clearly be from Detroit. They'd be like, "Yeah, go Tigers!" And I'm like, "Go Magnum." Anyway, quite a state in the world today. Hey, folks. Assassination attempt on Donald Trump. And I don't care which side of the aisle you're on. It's a pretty big deal. Like this is the guy who, former president, probably going to be the next president based on, the odds in Vegas. And they tried to kill him. And, we're not going to go down the rabbit hole today with, who was behind it, or was it, a setup, or, who was in on it, whatever. That's for another conversation. But what came out, and you knew it would, were the people who were really happy about this attempt and publicly talking about it. And generally when a few people are publicly talking about something, there's a whole bunch of other people that are thinking it, but they just didn't have the stones to say it. And, the people who came out and said it, they got shit on, and, rightfully so. You say something like that, there's going to be backlash. So, you know what? They said it. They owned it. This is sort of what I want to talk about today. At first, when I heard that, and you knew you would, right? You knew you'd see it. First, when I started to see some of the people saying this, whether it be just, Johnny blogger from his mom's basement in Ohio, or somebody saying it on a stage somewhere in front of a bunch of people, whether they are right or wrong in what they said, I believe they should have the right to say it. And that's probably pretty controversial. And by the way, like, I don't want anybody getting shot. It's not what I want at all. But in today's world, if you follow the world in politics, if you follow what's happening either regionally, globally, nationally, whatever, I don't care. If you follow it close enough, no matter which side of the aisle you're on, there's probably some people that you wish weren't on this earth anymore. I'll admit it. There's some politicians or world leaders who, I think they're making the world a notably worse place. And I'm of the opinion that if the world is worse with you in it, we'd be better off without you. It's controversial. I think the only thing controversial enough is that I'm saying it. I think we all know it's true, right? We all think it. Am I going to publicly say, geez, I wish so-and-so would get shot? No. But there's a bunch of people that if they got taken out, I wouldn't shed any tears, right? I wouldn't. I can't even believe I'm saying this now, right? Like I'm saying it, but just being honest. So, and to think that other people don't have that right to think that or feel that, it's hypocritical, right? There are people who look at Donald Trump the way I look at, I'm not going to say their names, but there's certain politicians or certain world leaders that I look at with the same view that they look at Donald Trump. I think they're horribly vile humans. And I can see why some people think that about the Donald. I get it, right? I don't feel that way. I quite like Donald Trump in spite of his flaws. And, I may or may not get into that later on this episode, but if you're going to believe in democracy and you're going to believe in freedom and you're going to believe in all those things, one of the things you have to come to grips with is accepting the fact that not everybody thinks the way you do, right? And I don't know about you, but the thing that drives me the most crazy in the world is hypocrisy. Like it drives me nuts. And so you've got all these people that, they want the right to have their opinions and to be, true to themselves, and they want to be able to say what they want to say and this and that, but they don't want you to have the right to think your opinions if they, if they don't align with theirs. It's the definition of hypocrisy, right? Like it's pretty gross. So I think, and this is, it was the Trump assassination attempt that sort of, reminded me of this. You don't get to be convenient with free speech and free thought. You either believe in it or you don't. And if you believe in it, you have to be willing to let people who have differing thoughts or differing words than you have to let them say it. You have to let them believe it. Hopefully they do it in a way that results in like actual conversation and dialogue, and because that's how we grow, right? Like I love talking to rational people on the other side. I love it. I think it's wonderful. That's how I learn. That's how I evolve. And hopefully, maybe I can, maybe we can both learn from each other and kind of meet in the middle. There are lots of liberals, progressives, whatever, who I respect like crazy as people. My friend Coulter is a great example of this, right? Like Coulter and I, he's one of my best friends, and Coulter and I couldn't have more differing views on almost any worldly topic, except we agree on the most important one. He totally respects my ability to think what I want to think, and I totally respect his. And it's so rare to have that friendship. Like, honestly, how many people do you know? If you're a person who, really pays attention to the world, I bet you could count on one hand the number of people you know who you disagree with on almost everything, but you can still have civilized conversations about those topics. I've got like maybe 2 or 3 of those. And I know a lot of people. Like I've got a network of friends that's like, it's massive how many friends I have. It's probably one of the things one of the things I'm the most proud of in this world is my network of friends and the caliber of those people. To me, I take it as like one of the best endorsements of me that there is, right? Is the number of people that I care about and the number of people that care about me. And I hope you feel the same about your network. It's a point of pride. Really is. But, I have a lot of friends and family members that, while, I still care about them, we can't talk about a lot of things. And, it's because it's just too heated. But really what it comes down to is that premise that they want the right to think what they think and to say what they want to say. They just don't think other people should have that right if they disagree with them. And like I said, I think it's the absolute definition of hypocrisy. So, if you're going to believe in that stuff, you gotta, I personally believe that if you're going to be strong in your values, you have to be willing to stand by them when it's uncomfortable. My former business partner and great friend, Nick, his name's Nick Fournier. He's just a wonderful man. And, he's got this line. I'm sure he didn't write this, but he picked it up somewhere. It's easy to have values until they're tested. Think about that. It's easy to have values until they're tested. And it's so true, right? Like so many of us, we've got our values and we say, we're so staunch in our values and, we believe in them. And then the second those values cause inconvenience for ourselves or a little bit of hardship, we can let it go this time. Well, the road to hell, right? That's how you get there. Just this once, we'll do it just this once. Well, yeah, just this once turns into, well, maybe we can do it again since we did it the first time, right? And then the next thing you know, your values are just gone, right? So I'm a believer in, like, look, I've strayed from my values, I'm sure, many times, but actually, if I'm being honest, I can't remember the last time I strayed away from my values. Anyway, I'm sure it's happened, but I honestly can't remember the last time. Maybe I'll think of one. But my point is, when we're going to have these values, we have to stick by them. And I think that that's part of the problem in the world today. And frankly, part of the problem that we have with masculinity in this world is that people just abandon them or hide them or let them go or deliberately go against their own values because they're afraid of the consequences of keeping them. It's true, right? This world of, where everybody gets a voice online, it comes with consequence, right? Like, yeah, everybody gets a voice. And now, you're not just talking at a dinner party. You're putting something on Twitter that the whole world could see if they wanted to. You're not just talking to your 4 or 5 close friends. You're talking to everybody. And because of the fact that there's a big part of the population that believes that you should not be able to say what you say, there comes this fear of censorship and canceling. And it's really unfortunate, right? Because they're afraid of, the backlash and, what if somebody sends this to my boss, or, what if so-and-so sees it, or what if so-and-so sees it? Well, what would be wrong with people who you love and care about seeing that you disagree with them on something, right? Like, 'cause that's where we are as a society now, is people are genuinely scared of the consequence of sharing their beliefs. And then when it becomes okay, you find out what people really think, right? Like right now, if you look, there are millions of people who were quietly supporting Trump, right? Like they go vote for him, they tell their friends, but they certainly wouldn't say anything online or anything like that, because God forbid they would be a Republican, right? Roughly half the country in the last election was Republican, but one side proudly was able to go out and say, oh yeah, I voted for Joe Biden, and the other half just very sheepishly voted for Trump. And don't get me wrong, like there are some people obviously who are more vocal about it, but nobody's ashamed of being a Democrat. Nobody's like embarrassed about it, but there's tens of millions of people out there who are embarrassed or scared of telling the world that they're a Republican. But now everybody's getting so brave, right? Like now the messaging around all this stuff, it's getting very, very, very loud. People that, celebrities and regular people and everybody saying, I stand by this person. And it took an assassination attempt to make them brave enough. It's a super interesting time in history, you guys. Like it is just a fascinating time in history. Like since this happened. So I'm recording this episode on Tuesday, July 16th. 16th? Yeah. Tuesday, July 16th. The assassination attempt was about 72 hours ago. I've been kind of in la la land, just thinking basically nonstop about what happened. And so when I get in that mode where I really go inward and I'm really thinking about a lot of stuff, and like we were 2 inches away from the world going in a totally different direction. It might be the most important 2 inches in the history of humanity when you think of the consequences. Not might be. It is definitely the most important 2 inches in the history of mankind. He doesn't turn his head. He's dead. No question. Think of what would have happened after that. Like, it's civil war. It's like, it's retaliation the other way. There'd be politicians getting shot all over the place, I'm sure. Instead, it's almost unifying us. Almost. Like, I was expecting, I don't watch The View, obviously, but every once in a while, I'm curious what those crazy Karens are saying. And, I was expecting them making jokes about, why couldn't that shooter be more accurate? But they were pretty contrite. They were pretty classy about it all, shockingly. They were saying, we're really glad he didn't get killed. We're really glad of this, thank God for this, blah, blah, blah. This might be the wake up call that society needs, you guys. This might be it. This might be it. Because I think both sides, no matter who you are, if you look at this, if you look at what happened, nobody wins if he gets shot, right? Nobody. And don't get me wrong, like there's all those people who hate him to the point where they were genuinely disappointed. And like I say, I'm sure that there are millions and millions and millions of people out there. I'm related to a bunch of them who were probably, initially really upset that didn't kill him. But I think as people are thinking about it and they're realizing what the repercussions for that would have been, I think they're starting to realize that, yeah, probably for the best that didn't get him, right? Again, no matter which side you're on, because the consequences for that, where it goes from there, nobody wins that fight. That is going to be, it's going to be awful if that were to happen. And I think after just a little bit of reflection, I think most people are there where they're like, shit, yeah, that's probably right. And then what's happened is the hate and the anger and all that stuff. Maybe it's just the way I'm reading it, but it seems to have softened a little bit. It's like I hear lots of messages from people on the right saying, hey, like, thank God we dodged this one, but we're not retaliating. Like, we don't want to escalate this. And almost every leader anywhere on either side is like, hey, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I think maybe a lot of them are thinking that, maybe they push things too far, right? It's sort of like the Greta Thunberg thing, right? Or whatever, Thunberg, whatever her name is, the young Swedish environmental activist. She and so many people in her generation, they get worked up into such a frenzy because they believe the world is going to end due to climate change, right? Like that's what they think. Well, if you really truly believe that the world was going to end, you'd do anything to stop it, right? Which is why you get some of this insane behavior where, people are gluing their hands to the road or wrecking paintings. I don't know what wrecking a painting is going to do to save the world, but like you see all the crazy activist actions that they're taking. And it's because they really believe that the world is going to end if we don't wake up. Now, I personally don't believe that. I think it's fine that somebody else does. I think it's sad that they do. I wish they didn't, because I think it's absurd, but I don't know for sure. Maybe the world is going to end, right? Maybe, they've been making these predictions that the world's going to end for 80 years now. I mean, one day they'll have to be right. If this world does end at some point, you gotta be right. But my point is that when people get worked up by the media and by their friends saying what their teachers say and all these things, when they get to the point where they're so worked up that they actually think the world is going to end, then they'll do crazy things because they don't care, right? Like, think about it. If you actually knew the world was going to end, Like, let's say somebody told you, okay, the world's going to end next week. You'd do things you've never done before. You'd like, of course you would, right? Like everybody would. You'd do stuff. And so if you felt like you could stop the end of the world, what wouldn't you do to stop it? You'd do anything, including sacrifice your own life, or like if you're looking at the greater good, of course you would. Like I think everybody would. And I think in the world of politics, I think that's where they've gotten. They've gotten to the point where they've worked so many people up into a frenzy where they actually believe that, if this person gets elected or that person gets elected, the consequence is going to ruin the country forever, or that, their freedom is going to be gone, or that democracy will be over, or he's going to cancel every other election and things like that. That's what they've done. The media, the people pulling the strings on how people think, they've gotten people to the point where they actually believe that the world that they know is going to end. Well, you think, you convince that many people that's going to happen. You think there's not going to be at least one person who doesn't try to take it into their own hands and end it? But that's where this whole thing about freedom of speech, that's where it comes in, right? Because those people who, let's use climate change as another example. Okay. So if you are a scientist who says, well, no, I actually don't think the world is going to end, and here's why, and you could back it up with all the data in the world, it doesn't matter. They're going to try to cancel you, right? They're going to. So as a result, you rarely see people step forward to talk about this because they can't afford to sacrifice their livelihood or their family's well-being or whatever. So they just won't say it. And then as a result, because they've stifled that free speech, these people who aren't either educated or aware or aren't wired to do some of their own thought and critical thinking and all those things, then they're going to believe it. And that's where the extremism comes from, right? And the extremism isn't reserved for just one side. It's not at all. There's extreme cases on both sides, but it's the censorship that gives them power, right? It really, really gives them power. And that's why free speech is absolutely so critical, and free thought, right? If we want to find the truth, you have to talk about it. And you have to talk about it in an open way where you're willing to hear the other person's side, actually hear it. You don't have to listen. You don't have to agree with everything they say, but maybe you listen to something and it softens your view on one thing or actually changes your opinion, right? That's a gift, right? That's a huge gift. Guys, I've said it before, but if you wake up 10 years down the road and you're the exact same person, you think all the same things, you haven't changed, you haven't evolved, you haven't grown, you just wasted 10 years. Like, you have to grow, you have to do, and changing your opinion doesn't mean you're changing your values, right? Here's an example. I believe in free speech. That's a value, right? But then my opinions on different things, they can change throughout time without sacrificing free speech. You can do that. So you're going to change your opinions. You should change your opinions. Your opinion should grow and evolve. And that's why, thought and conversation is so important. That's how you do that. That doesn't mean you have to change your values. I hope that makes sense. I wanted to clarify that. But anyway, getting back to my point, when you create a scenario where you can't have these conversations, the extremism gets really loud. And then those people who are already, wired to be maybe a little bit more fanatical, if they never get to have a conversation with somebody with a differing view, then how could they ever be anything but who they are? Right? That's what's been happening. And I think now, and this is the wonderful gift of that bullet missing by a couple inches, now people everywhere are starting to question the way that they've been going about things and starting to realize what a lot of us have been, aware of for quite a while. And that's the fact that the way that we've been having these conversations just doesn't work anymore. It really doesn't. And it's scary because Man, I actually seriously shudder to think. I keep thinking about this over and over and over. Our world forever, like if that was a crossroads, right? Like if, okay, the world is coming to this point, it's going to go one of two directions based on what happens with that bullet. And the direction that this place would have gone if that bullet would have killed him, holy shit, you guys. Through all of this, I've been looking at God and saying, like, when are you going to step in? Like at what point are you going to step in? I think we just saw the point, you guys. And I'm not saying that God hasn't been, God's pretty wise, got a plan. But I think that's the first time that I saw where God stepped in on something in front of the whole world and went, no, we're going this way. Thanks. We're not going to go that way. It's crazy, you guys. It's crazy to think what was going to happen if that bullet connected. Thank God that bullet didn't connect. And again, I don't care which side of the aisle you're on. This world was going to get way worse if that bullet killed him. Way worse. In a way that wasn't going to benefit anybody. At least no normal people, right? There are always people that win in wars, right? But they're not you and me. we don't come ahead in war, people like us. We don't. A crazy thing. Seriously, like bonkers. One of the barriers to free speech and the hypocrisy that comes with only letting people talk who you agree with. One of the big barriers for that is ego, right? It's ego. I've been very open with a lot of the work that I've done over the last 18 months with psychedelic medicine. And, one of the biggest benefits and the reason that you're able to level up and evolve and change the way you think in such profound ways is when you're in the medicine, your ego's gone. It's not there. It doesn't matter. And there's no shame either. So no shame, no ego. And if you really once you get comfortable in this medicine, and by the way, again, full disclaimer, I am not recommending that you go out and just willy-nilly do a bunch of psychedelic drugs. That is not what I'm saying. Please do not take this as an endorsement to go do that. That is not what I'm saying. Full disclaimer. If you haven't listened to my previous episodes, you would know that every time I've done this, I've done it under the supervision of a trained professional. I've sourced the medicine from good, safe places. I am not flippant about this at all. So just time out, full disclosure. I don't want anybody just going out and doing this willy-nilly. That is not the answer. But from my experience, when I've worked with the professionals that I've worked with, and I've made sure that everything that I'm doing is safe, once you get in that state, man, the impact that you can have on the way that you think, it is profound. And if for me, I'm just so hyper focused on growth, right? I am fully addicted to growth. And once you start growing, you just want more and more and more of it, including evolving the way you think and evolving the way you think about the world and changing your opinions and, growing and becoming more mature and more thoughtful about it all. You can't do that when your ego's in the way. You can't. And that's one of the biggest barriers, right? I think that there are a lot of things that we were told over the last, call it 4 or 5 years, that I think even the most, staunch supporters of some of the narratives, they have to be looking going, yeah, we probably got that one wrong. Right? Probably. And some of them are just so stubborn, they just can't ever do it. It's their ego that prevents them from doing that. Right? Because if they were to admit that they were wrong about something, it's some indictment of their character, or, everybody will think they're dumb for admitting it. So they just have to just dig their heels in and just keep doing more, even though it's just, patently absurd to be thinking that, some of these things that we thought even 4 or 5 years ago were still right. We got to let that ego go if we want to grow, you guys. You really do. And I don't think there's many traits that are more admirable than when somebody has the humility and the wisdom and the grace to not only change their views, but to look back and go, yeah, I was wrong about that one. You don't hear that very often, do you? You really don't. They view it as a weakness, and it's not. It's not. But it starts with making sure that we have the grace and the openness to continue to let everybody else think what they want to think, no matter how vile and shitty. Because you know what, guys? We all think vile and shitty things. It's like I talked about right off the top. You know, these vile views that we all have, we've all got views that are pretty shitty, right? We do. We don't talk about them. Sometimes we won't ever, let those, even say them to our most closest confidants. We'd never say them, but we all think of shitty things. We do. You get dark thoughts. They happen. And, like there are politicians in this world today that if they got shot, like I said, I wouldn't shed a tear, right? I wouldn't. I think the world would be better off without some of them. That's a really awful thing. And I don't like that I think that. It makes me really actually angry that I do feel that way. But I think anybody who's politically charged, there are some people that you look at that way and, it's awful, but it's true. So I don't blame the Trump supporters or the Trump haters for their initial reaction, but I'm glad that, it's calmed down. I'm glad that it has. It's good. I know this stuff is controversial, you guys. I know it is. And, I'm taking a pretty big risk today by saying some of this stuff. But like everything, right? Like I'm really trying to be vulnerable on this show and share some of my deepest, darkest thoughts and what I've gone through, because I think, we all have them. But it's also part of being human, right? And, you gotta let people be human. You gotta let them have their own experience and you have to let them get there. As long as they're not hurting anybody, right? Like you can think what you want, say what you want, but when you're like, actually causing real harm to other people. And by the way, I don't count hurting someone's feelings as real harm. You're going to get your feelings hurt, guys. Grow up. Shit happens. But, you have to let people have their own experience, and you have to let them grow and evolve and feel what they do. And the only way to do that is to let people say what's on their mind if they want to, right? Without fear of being canceled, without fear of that or anything else. And like, you can choose who you associate with. It doesn't mean that you have to spend all your time with people that you disagree with. But when there are people in your life that you love, that you already have a relationship with, if you're going to cut them off every time there's a topic that you don't agree with, not only are you losing people in your life that you love, but you're losing the opportunity to learn from them. And that's the worst, right? It's just the worst. I've lost a bunch of people in my life who they just won't talk to me anymore, because we have differing views, and I don't shove it down their throat. I'm not a dick about it. But as soon as they find out that I believe in this or that or anything else, like, it's just like, no, we're done. And I think even, if they were to change their beliefs, I don't think their ego would allow them to let me back in their life now. And unfortunately, like some of those people were people that I was insanely close with. Like one person, a relative who, was like a second dad to me. True mentor, like somebody I still love like a second dad, but I don't get invited to go see him anymore. See him every once in a while. We're civil, but like, he doesn't want me in his life anymore. He wants no part of it. It's really sad. Breaks my heart. But that's where we're at as society. And that comes from having these completely one-sided views, where those views are so extreme and so indoctrinated and so plugged in that they're not capable of having a conversation. They're just not. And, it breaks my heart. But, there's in almost everything shitty that happens, there's always, that silver lining. And I actually really think that 2-inch miss, I actually think that we've got a chance at a different world today. I really do. I wondered, right? Like I would argue the last time that North America and most of the free world was actually truly aligned were the weeks that followed 9/11, right? Like after the attacks, Congress got together, the Senate, everybody, they came together, and Democrats and Republicans everywhere, they stood, arm in arm, united against terrorism. And the country, that's the last time the United States was unified, but the whole world, like Canada, everywhere else, like I'm in Canada, like we, believe me, we were paying attention to 9/11. That was a big deal for us. The whole world came together in that. And one of the things, I lay awake at night and I think about things. And one of the things that I think about a lot is what would it take to bring everybody back together? Like Democrats, Republicans alike. And I've never thought of one. Like I thought of like an alien invasion or like, something really crazy that would force us all together. I don't know, you guys. I think this actually has a chance of doing it. And I'm not banking on it. Like, the world could go batshit crazy again in 2 more days, right? Like that wouldn't surprise me at all. But I think there's actually a chance at some peace and love here to say, well, wait a sec. Maybe the way we've been doing things was maybe just a little too much. Maybe it was overboard. Maybe we need to cool our jets a little bit. Both sides. The maturity from both sides has been actually amazing. It's been awesome. Like it's beautiful to see. I'm encouraged. I don't know when the last time I was, but I actually am a little bit encouraged right now. And I really hope that this is the spark that we need to start bringing people together. One of the things that's really interesting, like we know the algorithms, right? Like all the algorithms out there, and they do this on both sides, right? Like, when you watch reality TV, and I don't watch reality TV anymore, but I used to love like Big Brother and Survivor and shows like that. But it became pretty obvious to me how much control the editors have on those shows, right? Like they could paint the most honest person as a villain and vice versa, just in the way they edit, right? You cut this out, you do this, you do it from this angle. And that's why I would never go on one of those shows is I just wouldn't trust the editors to get it right. I mean, maybe they would, maybe they'd paint me as something better than I am, but I just want to be who I am. That's why I love doing the podcast. That's why I love doing this is I get to control the message. So hopefully my producer doesn't edit this in a way that makes me look like a piece of shit. And he never would. He's one of the best dudes out there. My boy Chesto, he's the best. So, I trust him with everything. But when you look at the way that the narrative that we focus on, right? Like if you're focused on these things, your algorithms are going to give you nothing but those messages. And if you focus on these, they're going to give you nothing but those. And it's just confirmation bias, right? Like it just keeps reinforcing the things that you say you believe in. It just makes them stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. And it makes it harder and harder to think of what the other side does. And I've certainly been guilty of it, right? Like I'll see a post and it'll be a clip and I'll look and it'll make this person look like just the most vile piece of shit ever. And then you get the larger clip and you watch it all and you're like, oh, well, that wasn't so bad. That's sort of taken out of context, right? And it's not to say that there aren't people that say and do really shitty things, but you got to kind of look at the whole message, right? And I know from, like a lot of my friends who, they just hate Donald Trump. Part of that comes from the fact that the clips that they show are just so grossly manipulated. And it's not to say that everything he said has been perfect. God knows, like you can't speak your mind as often as he does without giving a flying fuck about the consequence, without pissing people off, right? Like that just, comes with the territory. But when you realize how manipulated you are, it should really make you upset at the people who are doing that manipulating, right? And whether you like Elon Musk or not, I love what he's done with Twitter, right? Like totally changed that platform, trying to get rid of, as much of the bias as possible. The algorithm still feeds you what you want to see. Don't get me wrong, but it's certainly better than it was, if you're open to the truth and free speech. So the people who didn't like the truth and free speech, they're pretty pissed off that it's now going against them, getting back to that whole point of hypocrisy. So Anyway, I think you guys understand what I'm saying. And I'm going to challenge you. This is my challenge to you. I like to challenge my friends, my podcast listeners every once in a while. And I'd like to challenge you to have a conversation with somebody on the other side who's open and willing to have that conversation. And maybe you're direct enough to say, hey, I know you and I don't believe a lot of the same things, but I want to learn some of your perspectives. Can I ask you some questions without being confrontational? Start there. You don't even need to, like, don't say, I'm going to try to convince you of this or whatever. Don't worry about it. Just ask them questions and listen, and you'll gain compassion for the way they think. You will. If you can take your ego and emotion out of it, you might listen and go, holy shit, are they nuts? They might. You might. And that's okay, but at least you'll understand their perspective a little bit better. And then maybe that'll help us get along a little better. I've got a guy who, I really look up to. He's a member of the golf course I play at, and he's turned into a really good friend. And, we certainly have a number of different views, but I sent him a message this morning and I said, hey, can I talk to you about politics? Knowing that we have totally different views. And, I said, I just want to get your opinion on a couple things. He's like, absolutely. And again, he knows that I'm, on the other side. He was just getting ready to tee off. So we're going to have a conversation hopefully later today or tomorrow. And I'm hoping that I get to learn some things. That's how we grow, guys. That's how we do it. But you got to check your ego at the door. So if you are somebody who considers himself to be a patriot, freedom lover, somebody who really believes in free speech and free thought, and you want to be left alone to come to your own conclusions, then you got to be willing to do it on the other side. You have to be willing to let them do it too. And when you look at the root of all of the problems in the world, if you want to see the root cause, this is the root cause. It's trying to control how people think. That's how Hitler did it. That's how he did it. You want to really study how he pulled off what he pulled off, and how he indoctrinated an entire nation of good, honest people into doing like the worst, most vile things this world has seen since Genghis Khan. He tricked them. He did it by controlling the message and controlling their thoughts and ostracizing anybody who disagreed with them. How is that different than now? And I don't know about you, but I would be so embarrassed if I got tricked into doing terrible things for the wrong reason. I'd never forgive myself for being fooled like that. And, I know one of the best humans I know was, he grew up in Nazi Germany. He was just a little guy, but when I asked him one day about how did Hitler convince all these good, honest people to do such violent things and terrible things? And he said, because we didn't know we were the bad guys. Like, think about that. They thought they were on the right side of it. They didn't necessarily know that the Jews were being gassed or this or that, but they thought they were on the right side of history. That's what they thought. They thought they were doing it for the betterment of mankind. That's how you convince great people to do horrible things. And it's not that hard when you create peer pressure and censorship and you cancel people with differing views so that people can only get one perspective. That's the danger. And I think right now there are millions and millions and millions of people out there who are waking up to the fact that maybe they've been manipulated in a way that they didn't realize was happening. And hopefully, God willing, hopefully those people let their ego step aside a little bit and have the humility to go, geez, I might have been wrong. Maybe I need to rethink this. And that's when the conversations start. And if you portray yourself and you want to be a leader and you want to be somebody who can help people shift their thoughts in a healthy, positive way, maybe you can be one of those people that the other side can have a normal, healthy dialogue with to grow and evolve. And maybe you can learn from them too. Because guys, I got news for you. None of us are right. We're not. This is not a black and white world. If we were right, there'd be no need to evolve. We're going to be right about some things, wrong about other things, and other things are, we'll only know in time. But if we're not willing to have those conversations, then we're going to be stuck exactly where we are. It's a shitty scenario. So we got to be leaders in this, you guys. Army of great men. We got to be leaders. And that leadership comes with walking the walk, right? Can't just say you believe in free speech and free thought. You have to give people you disagree with the option to have that too. With that said, I'm going to end the episode today. We had a couple of episodes that got canceled with some guests that, not canceled, just postponed with just scheduling issues. But I really hope this one resonates. In a lot of ways, this might be the most important message I've ever recorded. Not that I have this grandiose thought that, this podcast is changing the world, but I know it's changing the lives of some people. I know because you reach out and you tell me. And, please keep doing that, by the way. If this stuff is hitting you, I love when you tell me, and not to stroke my ego, because it just gives me so much fuel that this effort and this thought that I'm doing is impacting somebody. I had one listener reach out, tell me that she's using some of this messages with her 10-year-old daughter's swim team. Do you know how awesome that feels for me to hear that this stuff is reaching somebody 4,000 miles away that stumbled onto this thing, and now she's using this to help coach her kid's swim team. Like, it just makes me just want to just do this all the time. So when I get these messages from people, it just gives me so much fuel, and it just feels so good. And I'm actually going to do a show. I was going to do a different show about the power that comes when you believe in someone and what it does for them. And we're going to talk about that here soon. But it makes an impact, you guys. It makes such an impact when somebody is doing anything to make your life better, and then you tell them, oh my God, rocket fuel, man. It's rocket fuel. So thanks for that. With that said, another episode in the books. Thanks for listening. And as always, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Instagram, all that stuff. Please share these messages. I want to share them far and wide, so, and I can only do that with your help. So thanks, everybody. Hope this is a fun one for you. Sticking my neck out a little bit with this one. So hope it doesn't blow back, but I'm okay if it does too. I'm a big boy. I'll live with it. So thanks, you guys. Have a great day.